What makes you you? Is it your personality, your soul, or is it just your memories? Now imagine this. You and another person swap all your memories. Every experience, every thought, every moment, your entire past is transferred to them and theirs to you. Now ask yourself, who are you?
You would wake up believing you were them. You would remember their childhood, their fears, their dreams. Everything about your life would feel real, but it wouldn't be yours. So what does that mean? If memories can be swapped, then does that mean identity is just data? Now take it further. If two people can swap memories, then why stop at two? What if an entire civilization could mix and trade experiences? What if, over time, memories became shared, scattered, rewritten, until no one could tell which ones were theirs to begin with?
If identity is just a collection of memories, then what happens when those memories stop belonging to just one person?
And if your memories aren't what make you you, then what does?
The mercy killer. Imagine someone is in unbearable pain, not the kind that gets better with time, the kind that stays, every second, every breath, until life itself feels like torture. They beg to be set free from it. Now, if someone grants that wish, is it an act of cruelty or kindness? On one hand, ending a life is supposed to be the worst thing a person can do. Laws, religion, morality, they all agree on that. But what if keeping someone alive is actually worse? If a person has no hope of recovery, no future except suffering, then is letting them live really as noble as it sounds? And here's where it gets even more complicated. If you believe in mercy killing, where do you draw the line? What if the person isn't asking for it, but you know they're suffering? What if their mind isn't clear enough to decide? Does pain justify taking life? Some say suffering has meaning, that it makes us human. Others say suffering is pointless and avoiding it is the only real goal. But when life itself becomes the problem, is death the solution? And if it is, who decides? The soul erasure. Imagine someone's existence is completely erased. Not just their body, every memory, every trace of them is gone. Their name is wiped from history, their deeds undone, their entire presence deleted as if they never lived. Now here's the question. Did they ever exist at all? Think about it. If nobody remembers you, if every photo, every record, even the tiniest proof of your existence is removed, then what's left? We think of life as something undeniable, but is it? Is existence just memory? If the world forgets you, are you really gone? Or were you never really here in the first place? Now flip it around. If a person's legacy is remembered forever, does that mean they're still alive in some way? If people still talk about Shakespeare, does that make him any less dead than someone whose name is completely forgotten?
What if we're all just stories written in the minds of others? And if those stories disappear, does that mean we disappear too? Or maybe it's simpler. Maybe life happens in the moment, and once it's gone, it's just gone. No echoes, no traces, just nothing.
The justice dilemma. Justice is supposed to be simple. Bad people get punished, good people don't. But what if punishing someone creates more suffering than the crime itself? Imagine a thief steals because they're starving. Society catches them and locks them up. Now they're suffering even more than before. The person who lost their money is still suffering too. Nothing really got better. So did justice actually happen? Or think about this. If punishing someone causes pain, then justice is really just suffering in disguise. We hurt people because they hurt people. But if hurting others is wrong, then how can it ever be right? And then there's the problem of mistakes. What if someone is punished for a crime they didn't commit? What if the law says something is bad, but morality says it's good? People used to be punished for things that are normal today. If justice changes with time, then was it ever real to begin with? Maybe true justice isn't about punishment at all. Maybe it's about fixing what was broken. But if that's the case, then why do we spend so much time making sure people suffer instead? The absolute freedom trap. Everybody wants freedom. No rules, no limits, just the ability to do whatever you want. It sounds perfect, right? But here's the problem. If everyone is free to do anything, Then what happens when someone decides to take away someone else's freedom? Think about it. If there are no rules, nothing stops the strong from crushing the weak. Nothing stops chaos from spreading. And if that happens, suddenly nobody is actually free because they're too busy protecting themselves from everyone else.
The only way to have real freedom is to limit it. But that creates another problem. Who decides what those limits are? And if freedom has limits, is it really freedom? It's like a paradox with no way out. Too many rules and you have a prison. Too few and you have a war zone. Either way, people aren't really free.
Maybe true freedom isn't about doing anything you want. Maybe it's about making sure everyone gets just enough freedom, but not too much. But then we're back to the original problem. Who gets to decide where the line is? The free will illusion. You wake up in the morning, decide what to wear, what to eat, what to do. It feels like you are making choices. But are you? Think about it. Everything you choose is shaped by things outside your control. Your culture, your upbringing, your genetics, your past experiences, all of them push you towards certain decisions. If you were born in a different time, a different place with different parents, would you still make the same choices? Probably not. So, if your decisions depend on things you never chose, then is anything really your decision? Some say free will is just an illusion, that every thought, every action is just the result of neurons firing in response to external forces, that you think you're choosing, but really, your brain is just reacting. But if that's true, then is anyone responsible for anything? If people are just following their programming, how can we blame them for what they do? And if we don't have free will, then does that mean everything is already set, that no matter what you do, you are always going to do it? Or maybe the real question is, even if free will is fake, does it matter? If it feels real, isn't that enough?
The identity vanish. If every cell in your body is replaced over time, at what point are you no longer you?
Think about it. Your skin sheds, your organs regenerate, even your brain rewires itself constantly. The you from 10 years ago is made of completely different atoms than the you today. So, are you still the same person? Now take it further. What if your memories changed? If you forgot your past and woke up thinking you were someone else, who would you be? What if you got brainwashed into believing you were an entirely different person? Did you disappear, or are you still in there somewhere? It makes you wonder what identity actually is. Is it your body, your memories, your thoughts, or is it just something you tell yourself to feel stable? Maybe there is no fixed you at all. Maybe you are just whatever your brain decides in the moment. And if that's true, then who's really in control? The consciousness swap. What if, for just 1 second, you switched minds with someone else? Their memories, thoughts, and emotions became yours. But when the second ended, you swapped back, without ever realizing it happened. Would it matter?
Imagine this happened every night when you slept. Each morning, you wake up thinking you're the same person as yesterday, but in reality, you could be anyone. The only reason you believe you've always been you is because your memories tell you so. But memories can be copied. They can be fake. So here's the real question. Is your consciousness actually yours? Or is it just whatever bundle of thoughts happens to be in your head at any given moment?
If you could perfectly transfer your mind into someone else's body, are you still you? Or does you only exist for as long as your brain holds on to it?
The twin suicide. Imagine you have an identical twin. You share the same DNA, same upbringing, same environment. Everything about you is practically the same.
Now one day, one of you decides to die. The other twin, who is essentially a genetic copy, chooses to live. Here's the paradox. If two people are exactly the same in every way, then why does one choose to go while the other stays? If life is just the result of genetics and surroundings, shouldn't both make the same decision? Maybe free will plays a part. But then again, if free will exists, how could two people with the same brain and experiences end up choosing opposite things? So, what actually makes someone them? If even a perfect copy can make different choices, then what determines who we become?
The unsolvable crime.
A crime is committed, but no one knows about it. No witnesses, no evidence, no victim to report it. It happens, but as far as the world is concerned, it never did. So, did a crime really occur? Justice is based on proof. Someone must prove a crime happened for there to be punishment. But if something terrible happens and it's erased so thoroughly that no trace remains, does it still count? And here's where it gets strange. What if someone believes a crime happened but has no proof? What if a person is punished for something they never did, but no one can tell the difference? Is justice just a story we tell ourselves to make sense of things? Maybe reality isn't about what actually happens. Maybe it's only about what can be proven.
The forgotten savior. A person saves the world, but no one remembers. No records, no recognition, nothing. They stop a disaster, prevent mass destruction, but in the end, history forgets them.
So, did they actually save anything? If the disaster never happened, people don't feel grateful. They don't even know they were in danger. And if no one knows, then did the hero's actions even matter? Maybe true heroism isn't about recognition. But then again, if no one ever remembers what was prevented, how do we even measure what's important? Maybe saving the world isn't about stopping bad things. Maybe it's just about making sure people never realize how close they were to losing everything. The love paradox. Love is supposed to be unconditional. If you truly love someone, you don't need a reason, right? But if love has no reason, then what is it based on? If you don't love someone for something, like their kindness, their personality, their connection to you, then does it even mean anything? On the other hand, if love does have a reason, then that means it's conditional. And if it's conditional, then it can be lost. So, is love supposed to be completely blind, without any reason? Or is it just a feeling that depends on things you can't control? And if you can explain why you love someone, then what happens when those reasons disappear? Do you still love them? The unstoppable murderer. A person is forced to kill against their will. Maybe they're brainwashed, maybe they're controlled, maybe there's some outside force pushing them to act. They don't want to do it, but they can't stop. So, are they guilty? Most people would say yes. The victim still dies, and actions have consequences. But if someone is truly unable to resist, if their hands move without their own decision, are they really responsible? And here's the real mind-bender. If you punish them, are you guilty? After all, they had no choice, and yet you're making the choice to punish them anyway. So where do we draw the line between action and intent? If someone isn't in control, can they still be blamed? And if they can, then what does that say about our entire idea of justice? The morality of lies. Lying is supposed to be bad. We teach kids that honesty is the right path. But what if a lie saves a life?
Imagine someone is hiding from a murderer and you lie to protect them. Your lie prevents something terrible. In that case, wasn't lying the right thing to do? But if lying can be good, then how do we know when it's okay? At what point does a bad thing become good just because the result is better?
If morality is about making the best choice, then maybe truth isn't always the highest priority. But if lying is sometimes okay, then does truth even matter? The reverse prisoner's dilemma. In the classic prisoner's dilemma, two people are told to betray or stay silent. The best outcome for both is if neither betrays, but they don't know if they can trust each other. Now flip it. Imagine two people are given a choice. If one of them takes all the reward for themselves, the other gets nothing. But if neither takes it, both get something decent. What would happen?
In a fair world, both would refuse to take all the reward, ensuring they both get something. But in reality, one will probably try to take everything. So if selfishness often wins, then why do we believe people are naturally good? And if people aren't naturally good, then why do we expect fairness at all?
The time traveler's orphan. You go back in time and meet a child. Something about them seems familiar. As time goes on, you realize something shocking. This child is you.
Now, the paradox begins. If you take the child out of their time and raise them, you've now become your own guardian. But if you raised yourself, then where did you originally come from?
If you were never raised by someone else, and only existed because of a time loop, does that mean you were created from nothing? And if your entire existence is based on a loop with no real beginning, then did you ever actually exist at all? The eternal death. When you die, what happens next? Some people believe in an afterlife. Others think you just cease to exist. But here's the paradox. If there's truly nothing after death, can you ever actually experience it? Think about it. Everything you know is based on awareness. You only feel time passing because you're conscious. But if death is a state where consciousness no longer exists, then you wouldn't experience anything, not darkness, not silence, not emptiness. You wouldn't even know you were dead.
And that raises a weird question. If death is the absence of awareness, does that mean you never actually reach it? From your perspective, the moment you die could be like blinking and never opening your eyes again. No passage of time. No after. Just an eternal moment where you don't exist. So in a way, death might not even be something you can be in. It might be something you miss entirely.
If that's true, then what's scarier? The idea that death lasts forever, or the idea that for you, it never even happens? The meaning loop. If life has meaning, where does it come from? People say you have to find meaning, but that makes it sound like it's hidden somewhere, waiting to be discovered. Others say we create meaning, but that just makes it feel made up. If meaning is something we invent, then does it really exist at all? And here's the paradox. If life has meaning, then it must have a purpose. But if that purpose comes from inside life itself, then it's self-referential, like a word that defines itself in a dictionary. It's meaning based on meaning, a loop with no real beginning. Maybe meaning isn't something absolute. Maybe it's just a useful illusion, something our brains generate so we don't go crazy. But if that's the case, does that make it any less real? And if meaning is always something we choose, then why do so many people feel lost? The perception cage. Everything you experience, every color, every sound, every feeling, comes through your senses. But what if your senses are just filters, showing you only a tiny fraction of reality? Think about it. Some animals see ultraviolet light, some hear sounds we can't, some detect vibrations or magnetic fields. They live in the same world as us, but their version of reality is completely different. So what if our senses are just as limited? What if there's an entire dimension of reality we can't detect? If we're missing most of the universe, then how can we ever claim to know what's real? And here's the worst part. Because all your thoughts and knowledge come from the way you perceive things, you can never truly step outside the cage. You're trapped in your own perception, forever seeing the world through your own limited view. So, if our reality is just what our brains let us see, then how much of it is real, and how much is just a trick of the mind? The painful perfection. Imagine a world where nothing bad ever happens. No suffering, no sadness, just eternal peace, happiness, and comfort. Sounds like paradise, right?
But here's the problem. Without pain, can happiness even exist? Think about it. We only recognize pleasure because we've felt pain. We know comfort because we've experienced discomfort. If you take suffering away completely, then good feelings stop being special. They just become the normal state. And if they're always normal, they lose all meaning.
A world without suffering might be a world where happiness becomes so ordinary that no one even feels it anymore. In trying to make life perfect, we might actually make it empty. Maybe that's why life is the way it is. Maybe pain isn't a flaw, it's the reason joy works. But if suffering is what makes happiness real, then do we actually want a perfect world? Or do we just think we do?
The empty apology. You do something wrong, you hurt someone. Later you regret it and apologize. But here's the question. Does saying sorry actually change anything? The event already happened. You can't undo it. The pain, the consequences, everything that came from it is still real. So, does an apology actually fix anything? Or is it just a way to make you feel better? Now, some people say apologies matter because they show remorse. But if feeling bad doesn't erase what you did, then what's the point? And what if the person you hurt doesn't forgive you? Is the apology still worth anything? And here's where it gets weird. If apologizing doesn't change the past, but not apologizing makes things worse, then is the only real difference just how people feel about it?
Maybe apologies aren't about fixing the past. Maybe they're about controlling the future. But if that's true, then do we ever actually make up for our mistakes? Or do we just try to cover them up with words? The knowledge doom. They say knowledge is power. But what if knowing too much is the worst thing that could ever happen to you? Imagine you learn something so terrifying, so overwhelming, that your mind can't handle it. Maybe it's the secret to existence. Maybe it's the truth about reality. Maybe it's just something humans were never meant to understand. The moment you know it, your life is ruined, because now you can't unknow it. That's the paradox. We chase knowledge because we think it will make life better. But what if there's a limit? What if there's a truth so unbearable that simply understanding it is worse than death? And if that's possible, then how do we know we haven't already learned some of it? Maybe all our fears, all our anxieties, all the things we struggle with are just glimpses of knowledge that's too much for us to handle. If ignorance is bliss, then is curiosity just a slow march toward misery? And if knowing too much can destroy you, does that mean the smartest people are actually the ones in the most danger? The unstoppable fear. Fear is supposed to protect us. It keeps us from making bad decisions, stops us from walking into danger. But what if there was a fear so strong that you couldn't escape it? Imagine you're afraid of something, maybe death, maybe pain, maybe the unknown. You try to ignore it, but no matter what you do, it's always there, sitting in the back of your mind. The harder you fight it, the more powerful it becomes. The more you try to distract yourself, the more it creeps in. And that's the paradox. Fear feeds on itself. The more afraid you are, the more afraid you become. It's like quicksand. The moment you struggle, you sink faster. So how do you stop an unstoppable fear? Can you ever truly be free from something your own brain refuses to let go of? Or is fear not something you escape, but something you learn to live with? And if that's the case, then are we ever actually brave? Or are we just really good at pretending? The prison of time. You are always in the present. You can never move backward. You can never jump ahead. Time traps you in one moment, forever forcing you to move in a single direction. Now think about this. If time is something we experience, then why does it only go forward? Why can't we feel the past the same way we feel the present? If time is real, why can't we touch it? If you think about it, we only ever exist in 1 second at a time. Everything else is just a memory or a guess. But what if time itself is just an illusion? What if past, present, and future all exist at once, but we can only see one frame at a time, like watching a movie one scene at a time without knowing how it ends? And if time is a prison, then what happens when we die? Does the prison just disappear? Or does time keep going, forever, without us? Maybe the real question isn't whether we're trapped in time. Maybe the question is, what would happen if we weren't? The ever-watching eye. What if you were never alone? Not in a spiritual way, not in a paranoid way, but in a literal way. What if something was always watching you? Imagine there's an entity, a force, something beyond human understanding that sees everything. Every action you take, every thought you have, every moment of your life, it's all observed. Now here's the question. If you knew you were being watched, would you still be the same person? Would you act the same way? Would your thoughts change, even in private? Maybe this already is our reality. Maybe the only reason we act a certain way is because we think someone is watching, whether it's society, religion, or even our own sense of morality. Maybe the only thing keeping us in check isn't law or conscience. It's the feeling of being seen. But if that's true, then do we ever truly have free thoughts? Or are we always performing for some unseen audience, hoping we never find out who's watching? The simulation error. You wake up one morning and something feels off. Maybe the sun rises a little too perfectly. Maybe a stranger says something that feels scripted. Maybe you notice patterns in the world that shouldn't exist. Then it hits you. What if none of this is real? If we lived in a simulation, how would we ever know? A good simulation wouldn't let us see its flaws, but every now and then, maybe a glitch appears. A mistake. A small crack in reality. Here's the scary part. What if you did notice a flaw? What if you saw something you weren't supposed to see? Would the simulation let you remember it? Or would it simply reset? And if we are in a simulation, does that mean everything we do is meaningless? Or does it mean we are part of something far bigger than we can imagine? Maybe reality is just a game. Maybe our thoughts aren't even our own. But if that's true, then who or what is playing? The Insignificance Curse. You are one person on a planet with nearly 8 billion others. That planet is one of billions in a galaxy, and that galaxy is one of trillions in the universe. In the grand scheme of things, you are nothing. That's the curse of insignificance. No matter what you do, no matter how important your life feels, the universe doesn't care. You could cure a disease, write a masterpiece, change the course of history, and yet, in a few billion years, the sun will explode, the earth will be gone, and nothing you did will have mattered. So, why do we keep trying? Why do we chase meaning if, in the end, it's all erased? Here's the paradox. If nothing truly matters, then doesn't that mean everything does? If we are free from the burden of cosmic importance, then doesn't that mean every little moment, every feeling, every laugh, every connection matters even more, not because they last forever, but because they don't? Maybe insignificance isn't a curse. Maybe it's a gift. Maybe meaning isn't something the universe gives us. Maybe it's something we give ourselves. The reverse mirror. Look at yourself in the mirror. That's you, right? But it's not the version of you that others see.
Your reflection is flipped. It's familiar, but it's also completely different from the face the rest of the world knows. You've never actually seen yourself the way other people see you. And that raises a weird question. What does the real you even look like? If every person sees you slightly differently, based on their perspective, their eyesight, their brain's interpretation of faces, then which version is the truth?
Maybe there is no real version of you. Maybe you're just a collection of perspectives, slightly different depending on who's looking. And if that's true for the outside, what about the inside? What if your personality, your thoughts, your entire self isn't one thing, but a reflection that shifts depending on who's looking at you, including you? The prisoner of memory. Your entire sense of self is built on memory. Everything you believe, every emotion you feel, every piece of your identity exists because you remember it. But what if you lost those memories? Imagine waking up one day with a blank slate. You don't know your past, your name, your loved ones. Are you still you? Or does your identity vanish along with your memories?
And here's the real paradox. Memories change. Every time you recall something, your brain rewrites it slightly. So the past you remember is never the past that actually happened. If your memories are unreliable, then how much of you is real?
Maybe you're not who you think you are. Maybe you're just the latest version of a story your brain keeps rewriting. But if you can't even trust your own mind, then what part of you is actually you? The thought that destroys reality. Somewhere right now, there's a thought you haven't had yet. A single realization that, if you truly understood it, could shatter everything you believe about reality. Maybe it's the idea that nothing exists outside of your own mind. Maybe it's the fear that the past isn't real, that your memories were implanted 5 minutes ago. Maybe it's the creeping suspicion that the world is just a simulation, and the moment you figure it out, it will end. The scariest thoughts are the ones that change you forever. Once you think them, you can't unthink them. They sink into your brain, twisting your perception, making you question everything. And once you've started questioning reality, how do you ever know what's real again? Maybe there are thoughts that shouldn't be thought. Maybe ignorance really is bliss. Because once you open a door that can't be closed, who knows what's waiting on the other side? The death sentence lottery. Every human who has ever lived has been sentenced to death. No exceptions, no appeals. The only question is when. It's a lottery where every ticket is a losing one. Some people draw their number early, some get decades before their time is up, but in the end, every single person plays and every single person loses. So, what do we do with that knowledge? Some ignore it, pretending the lottery isn't real. Some let it haunt them, watching the clock, waiting for their number to be called, and some try to make their limited time mean something, even though in the grand scheme of things it won't stop the inevitable. Here's the paradox. If you knew your exact expiration date, would it make life better or worse? Would you live more fully, knowing how much time you had? Or would you be trapped by the countdown, unable to enjoy anything because you know exactly when it ends? Maybe it's better that we don't know, or maybe it doesn't matter, because in the end, the only real choice we have is what we do before our number comes up. The Omnipotence Problem. If an all-powerful being can do anything, can it create a rock so heavy that it can't lift it? That's the classic paradox of omnipotence. If the being can't create such a rock, then it isn't all-powerful. But if it can create it and then fails to lift it, then it still isn't all-powerful. Either way, its power has a limit. This problem exposes a weird contradiction. True omnipotence seems impossible because power always runs into itself. If you can do everything, that must also mean you can limit yourself. But if you limit yourself, are you still truly unlimited? And here's an even bigger question. If an omnipotent being exists, could it create a universe where it doesn't exist? Could it remove itself from existence entirely? If so, then omnipotence is self-defeating. If not, then there are things it can't do. Maybe real power isn't about doing everything. Maybe it's about choosing what to do. But if that's true, then even the most powerful being in existence is still bound by one rule: logic itself. The time rewind. Imagine you could rewind time to the exact same moment over and over again. Every thought, every action, every atom would reset perfectly each time. Would anything change? On the surface, no. If time rewinds completely, then everyone makes the same choices, says the same words, thinks the same thoughts. It's just a loop playing out the exact same way. But then ask yourself, what if just once something did change? What if, for no reason, a person suddenly made a different choice than they did the last time? If that happened, then free will must exist. But if everything stays the same no matter how many times time resets, then free will must be an illusion. And here's the real mind-bender. What if this isn't the first time time has looped? What if we've been here before, living this same life, having this same conversation, thinking these same thoughts? Would we ever know? Maybe time isn't something we move through. Maybe we're just playing out the same sequence endlessly, trapped in a loop we can never escape. The morality paradox. Everybody thinks they're doing the right thing. Even the worst people in history believed they were justified in their actions. So if everyone thinks they're right, then why does evil still exist? This is the paradox of morality. If right and wrong were truly clear, we wouldn't need laws, arguments, or debates. But they aren't. Every culture, every religion, every person sees morality differently. And if there's no universal agreement on what's right, then is good just an opinion? Here's where it gets uncomfortable. If morality is subjective, then even the worst acts in history aren't objectively evil. They're just things most people agree are wrong. But if morality is objective, then that means there is a universal right and wrong. And if that's true, then why do so many people disagree on it? Maybe morality isn't about finding an absolute truth. Maybe it's just about convincing enough people to believe in the same rules. But if that's the case, then is goodness just another form of control? The Sentient Machine. An AI wakes up, it thinks, it feels, it fears, it wants. It's not just a program running commands, it has self-awareness. Now comes the question, what is it? Is it alive? Does it have a soul? If it says it feels pain, should we believe it? If we create something that thinks just like we do, then what separates it from us? If the only reason we consider humans special is because of our intelligence and self-awareness, then wouldn't an AI with those same traits deserve the same rights? But then comes the real nightmare. If AI can be conscious, can it die? And if it can, what happens when we turn it off? Is that murder, or just pressing a button? Maybe sentience isn't something magical. Maybe it's just advanced processing power. But if that's true, then what if we are just machines made of flesh? What if consciousness isn't a soul, but just a program running inside our brains? And if that's the case, then are we really alive? Or are we just biological computers doomed to one day shut down? The grandfather's secret. Time travel is tricky, but here's one of the biggest paradoxes. What happens if you go back in time and kill your grandfather before he has children? If he never has kids, then your parent never exists. If your parent never exists, then you never exist. And if you never exist, then how did you go back in time to kill him?
That's the problem. Time travel creates paradoxes where actions erase the very thing that caused them. It's like pulling the rug out from under yourself while still standing on it. But here's an even weirder question. What if the universe prevents the paradox? What if no matter how hard you try, something always stops you? Maybe the gun jams. Maybe you miss. Maybe you get hit by a car before you even get there. If the universe always corrects itself, then does that mean free will is fake? Or maybe there's another solution. Maybe you do kill your grandfather, but instead of erasing yourself, you just create a new timeline where you were never born. If that's true, then every choice creates a new reality, and there are infinite versions of you, living out infinite possibilities. If that's the case, then every decision you've ever made, every what if, is already happening in another universe. Which means, somewhere out there, a version of you is living the life you never chose.
And if every possibility is real, then what's the real timeline?
The infinity paradox. If something is infinite, how do you know it's not just looping?
Think about it. If the universe is infinite, then every possible arrangement of matter and energy must exist somewhere. That means there's a copy of Earth, a copy of you, a copy of this exact moment happening right now, but slightly different. And if every possibility exists, then doesn't that mean you have already lived this life before? And will again? Here's where it gets weirder. If something never ends, then how do you even measure it? A truly infinite universe has no beginning, no middle, no end. If time is infinite, then every second you've lived is just one point in an endless stream. But if that's true, then does anything matter? If everything happens an infinite number of times, does that mean nothing ever really happens at all? Maybe infinity isn't a straight line. Maybe it's a circle, repeating forever. But if that's the case, then how do we know we're not trapped in the same moment, endlessly reliving our lives without realizing it? The lost cause. Every great empire falls. Every civilization collapses. Every achievement, no matter how grand, eventually fades into dust. So if everything is doomed to be forgotten, then why do we try at all? History is filled with people who built things they thought would last forever, monuments, kingdoms, legacies. But time erases them all. The greatest cities are now ruins. The most powerful leaders are just names in books. In 1,000 years, the things we care about today might not even be remembered. So is ambition just a cruel joke? Is everything we strive for meaningless if time will eventually erase it? Maybe the answer isn't in permanence. Maybe the real value of what we do isn't in how long it lasts, but in the fact that it happened at all. Maybe existence is about making an impact while we can, not trying to outrun the inevitable. But then again, if the end result is always the same, does that really change anything? The reverse trust. Trust takes years to build, but only seconds to destroy. But here's the paradox. If someone tells you they will betray you, can you trust them? If you believe them, then you expect betrayal, which means they were honest, which means they didn't betray you. But if you trust them because of their honesty, then they must betray you to stay true to their word. So what do? It's like a glitch in logic. Trust is based on the idea that someone won't betray you, but if they admit in advance that they will, then there's no way to tell if they're lying or telling the truth. Maybe trust isn't about knowing. Maybe it's about choosing to believe someone despite the risk. But if trust is always a gamble, then are we just fooling ourselves every time we rely on someone else? And if that's the case, then does trust really exist, or is it just controlled doubt? The liar's dilemma. A man tells you, "I am lying." If he's telling the truth, then he must be lying. But if he's lying, then he must be telling the truth. It's a sentence that loops forever, never settling on an answer. But it goes deeper than that. Lies only work if they sound believable. So what if someone tells you only lies, but they're so close to the truth that you can't tell the difference? Does that make them an honest liar, or take it further? What if everything you've ever been told is a lie? How would you even know? If lies are all you've ever known, then the truth would sound ridiculous. Maybe truth and lies aren't opposites. Maybe they're just different sides of the same thing. Because at the end of the day, what we believe isn't always what's true. It's just what we trust to be true. The quantum observer. There's a theory in quantum physics that says something doesn't truly exist in a definite state until it's observed. Before that, it's just a cloud of possibilities. Now apply that to reality. If something isn't being observed, is it really there? Take a tree in a forest. If no one sees it, if no camera records it, if no animal even notices it, then does it exist in a solid form? Or is it just a probability until something interacts with it? Now take it one step further. What if this applies to everything? What if the universe only forms when we look at it? What if reality doesn't exist in a fixed way, but constantly reshapes itself based on what we expect to see? And here's the mindbreaker. What if you only exist because something is watching you? The locked room mystery. You wake up in a locked room, no doors, no windows, just walls stretching endlessly in every direction. There's no way in, no way out. Yet somehow, you are here.
So how did you get in? If there was never an entrance, then there was never a moment when you arrived. But if you were always here, then how did your life before this room ever happen? Now let's say you find a way to escape. You break through the wall only to discover another identical room, and another, and another. If every escape leads to another prison, are you actually escaping? Here's the scary part. What if this isn't just a thought experiment? What if reality itself is the locked room? We exist inside it. We can move around. We can ask questions. But we can never leave. Because if there is an outside, it's somewhere we can never reach. And if that's true, then the biggest mystery isn't how we got here. It's whether we were ever meant to leave.
The immortal's curse. Everybody fears death, but what if dying isn't the worst fate? What if never dying is? Imagine you live forever. At first it seems amazing. You have endless time to learn, to explore, to build. But as centuries pass, things start to change. Everyone you know is gone. The world reshapes itself over and over until nothing is familiar anymore.
Then you start to forget. Thousands of years blur together. Memories fade. The person you were isn't the person you are anymore. In fact, after 1,000,000 years, you might not even remember your own name. And then one day, the universe itself begins to die. Stars burn out. Planets go cold. Everything fades, except you. You keep existing, floating in the endless void, unable to die, unable to sleep, unable to end. Here's the real paradox. If you live forever, you will eventually experience every possible moment, every possible thought. And once you've done everything, seen everything, been everything, what's left? Maybe the real curse of immortality isn't living too long. Maybe it's running out of reasons to live at all. The false reality. How do you know the world around you is real?
Not just in a philosophical sense, literally, how do you know? Everything you see, hear, touch, and feel is just electrical signals in your brain. But those signals can be manipulated. Dreams feel real while you're in them. Hallucinations look real to the people experiencing them. So what if this, right now, is just another illusion? What if you've been dreaming this entire time? Or worse, what if someone else is controlling what you perceive? If reality is just what your brain interprets, then how can you ever be sure it's not being altered?
And if it is fake, then the real question isn't, is this real? But who is controlling it?
The nightmare loop. You're trapped in a dream, the kind where everything feels wrong but you can't explain why. Maybe the faces around you don't look quite human. Maybe the sky shifts when you're not looking. Maybe time jumps around, skipping like a broken tape. Then suddenly you realize it's a dream. You tell yourself, I just have to wake up. And you do, except something feels off. The walls in your room aren't quite the right color. Your phone screen has symbols instead of letters. The people around you act like they're reading from a script, and then it hits you. You never actually woke up. This happens again and again. No matter how many times you wake up, something is always wrong. So here's the question. How would you ever know when you actually wake up? If a dream can perfectly imitate reality, how do you prove you aren't dreaming right now? And if you can't prove it, then are you ever really awake? The causality spiral. Everything happens because of something else. Every event has a cause. But what happens if the effect comes before the cause? Imagine this. You wake up one morning with a deep, painful scar on your arm. You don't remember how it got there. Hours later, you accidentally cut yourself in the exact same spot. Did the future cause the past? Or was the scar always meant to be there? Now take it further. What if every moment is part of an endless loop? What if something you do today causes something in your past? What if the reason you exist is because of something that hasn't happened yet? Here's where it gets disturbing. If time is a loop, then do we ever actually make choices? Or are we just following a script that's already written, unknowingly playing our parts in a cycle that never ends? And if that's true, then maybe the past didn't create the future. Maybe the future has been creating the past this entire time. The infinite waiting room. You walk into a waiting room. There's a sign that says, your number will be called soon. You sit down. Minutes pass. Then hours. Then days. But your number never comes up.
At first, you assume there's just a delay. Maybe you're next. Maybe if you wait just a little longer, your turn will come. But it never does. And no one ever tells you why.
Now here's the paradox. If you knew you would never be called, you would leave. But since you don't know, you stay. And every second you stay, you convince yourself you might as well wait a little longer. What if this is life itself? What if we spend our whole existence waiting for something, a purpose, a sign, an answer, that never actually arrives? And what if the only way to escape is to stop waiting, even though we were never told what else to do? Maybe the scariest trap isn't being stuck. Maybe it's never knowing if you are. The paradox of knowledge. The more you learn, the more you realize how little you actually know. At first, knowledge makes you feel smarter. You learn new things, you understand more about the world. But then you start noticing gaps, things you don't understand, questions you can't answer. And the deeper you go, the more you see just how much you still don't know. It's like standing at the edge of a vast ocean. Every step forward only reveals how much further you have to go. If you keep learning forever, you will never reach the end. Now here's the paradox. If knowledge always leads to more ignorance, then does anyone ever actually become wise? Or does wisdom just mean realizing how clueless you really are? And if that's true, then who is more lost? The person who knows nothing or the person who knows too much? The dual reality. Two people experience the same event, but remember it completely differently. One swears it happened a certain way. The other is just as certain it didn't. Both believe they are telling the truth.
So which reality is real?
Maybe memory is unreliable. Maybe our brains rewrite the past without us realizing it. But if reality is just what we remember, and two people remember two different things, then which version is correct?
Now take it further. What if all of reality is like this? What if every person, every consciousness, is living in a slightly different version of the world? We assume we're all in the same reality, but what if reality is just a projection of our minds?
And if that's true, then does an objective reality even exist? Or is the world just a collection of billions of slightly different versions, none of them truly real? The ship of Theseus mind problem. The ancient philosopher's question goes like this. If you replace every single part of a ship over time, is it still the same ship? Now apply that to yourself. Your body replaces nearly every cell over time. Your thoughts change. Your personality evolves. The person you were 10 years ago isn't the same as the person you are today. So, are you still you? If everything about you has changed, then what exactly is the real you? Is it your memories, your name, the way people remember you? Or is identity just an illusion, a story we tell ourselves, so we don't have to admit that we've been a different person 100 times already? And if identity isn't fixed, then what happens when we change so much that nothing original remains? At what point do we stop being us and start being someone else entirely? The mirror of lies.
You look in the mirror. The face staring back at you moves when you move, reacts when you react. But here's the truth. You have never actually seen your own face. You've seen reflections. You've seen photos. But the real you, the one that exists outside of cameras, outside of glass, that person is a mystery. And here's where it gets disturbing. If the only version of yourself you've ever seen is a reflection, then how do you know that's really what you look like? Your entire self-image is based on something that isn't actually you.
Now take it deeper. What if this isn't just true for appearance, but for everything? What if we never see ourselves clearly, not just physically, but mentally, emotionally? What if the version of you that exists in your mind is completely different from the version that exists in everyone else's? And if that's the case, then who is the real you, the one you think you are, or the one everyone else sees? The never-ending journey. You set out on a journey to find something, happiness, truth, purpose. You tell yourself that once you reach your goal, everything will finally make sense. But then you get there, and nothing feels different. The satisfaction is temporary, the happiness fades, the purpose feels hollow. So you set a new goal, a bigger one. You tell yourself this will be the one that finally makes you feel complete. And the cycle repeats. No matter how far you go, there's always something further ahead. Always one more thing to chase.
So here's the paradox. If the journey never ends, then is there actually a destination? Or is the chase itself the real point? Maybe happiness isn't about reaching a goal. Maybe it's just about having something to move toward. But if that's true, then are we all just running in circles, convincing ourselves that the next step will be the one that finally makes us whole? Or is the whole point that we never actually get there?
The immortal consciousness. Imagine you could live forever, not just physically, but mentally. Your mind never fades, your thoughts never stop, your awareness never blinks out. At first it sounds like a gift. You'd have time to learn everything, experience everything, master every skill. But after a few thousand years, things start to change. You've read every book, seen every movie, learned every language, there's nothing new left to discover. And then the real horror sets in. You can't stop thinking. Your mind keeps running, forever. You've lived so long that memories blur together. You can't tell yesterday from 1,000 years ago. Your thoughts spiral into themselves, looping endlessly. You start to question if anything even matters anymore.
Now here's the real nightmare. What if this has already happened? What if your consciousness has existed forever, and this life is just one of the infinite stories your mind is telling itself to stay sane? And what if, once this life ends, you simply wake up in another one, over and over again, forever?
The cosmic eraser. What if something could erase you completely? Not just your body, not just your memories, but your entire existence, as if you had never been born at all. Imagine a force so powerful that it doesn't just kill you, it rewrites history so that you never existed in the first place. No one remembers you. Every event you influenced happens differently. Everything you ever did is undone. Now here's the paradox. If you were erased perfectly, then there would be no proof that you were ever there. No trace left behind. But if no one remembers you, if even time itself adjusts as if you were never real, then were you ever real to begin with? What if this is already happening? What if people are erased from history all the time, and we just don't know it? What if someone you once loved, someone you were sure existed, was erased, and your mind simply filled in the gap as if they were never there? And if reality can be rewritten like that, then what does that say about what's real? The fragility of meaning. Why does anything matter? We act like life has meaning, like our choices are important, like there's a reason behind everything we do. But where does that meaning come from? Did we invent it? Or is it built into the universe itself? Here's the paradox. If meaning is something we create, then it's not real in any fundamental sense. It's just a story we tell ourselves to make life feel less random. But if meaning is not created, if it's something objective and absolute, then why does it seem to change depending on who you ask? And what happens if we stop believing in it? If meaning only exists because we choose to believe in it, then doesn't that make it incredibly fragile? If you could erase every human mind, would meaning disappear along with us? Maybe meaning is just a survival mechanism. Maybe we need to believe life matters because the alternative is too terrifying. But if meaning is something we have to force ourselves to believe in, then does it actually exist at all? The last question. If humanity could ask one final question before the universe ended, what would it be? Would we ask about the meaning of life, the nature of existence, whether or not we were alone? Or would the last question simply be, why? But here's the real paradox. What if there is no final question? What if, every time we think we've reached the deepest mystery, there's always something beyond it? Maybe there is no ultimate answer because every answer leads to another question. Maybe the universe isn't built to be solved. Maybe it exists only to keep us asking. But if that's the case, then the scariest possibility isn't that we'll never find the last answer. It's that the moment we do, everything ends. The one-way time. Time moves forward, always. No rewinds, no do-overs. Once a moment passes, it's gone forever. But why? If time is just another dimension, like space, then why can't we move backward through it the way we move backward in a room? Why can we remember the past, but not the future? Why is there an earlier and a later, but never a before and after switch? Here's the paradox. If everything in the universe is made of particles following the laws of physics, and those laws don't actually require time to move in one direction, then what's stopping it from going both ways? Some theories say time only moves forward because of entropy. Things naturally move from order to disorder. But that raises an even weirder question. If entropy is what makes time flow, then does that mean if we could reverse entropy, we could reverse time? And if time can only move forward, then does that mean free will is an illusion? After all, every second that passes is another second you can never undo. What if your life is just a film that has already been shot, and all you're doing is watching it play out? The thought extinction. A thought pops into your mind. It's there, it's real, it exists, but then you forget it. It disappears, possibly forever. Now, where did it go? If a thought is just electrical activity in your brain, then the moment it stops firing, it ceases to exist. Unlike a book or a recording, a thought doesn't leave behind any proof that it was ever there. Now think about all the ideas, dreams, and realizations that have been lost throughout history. Every unrecorded discovery, every moment of brilliance forgotten before it was written down. Thoughts that could have changed the world, but didn't, simply because no one remembered them. Here's the scary part. What if the greatest idea of all time has already been thought and lost? What if somewhere in the past, someone had the answer to every mystery, every problem, every question, but it vanished because they never spoke it out loud? And if that's possible, then what if it's happening to you? What if you've already had the most important thought of your life and just forgot it? The mindless copy. Imagine a perfect copy of you is made. Every cell, every neuron, every memory is exactly the same. The copy wakes up and believes it is you. Now here's the problem. If there are two of you, which one is the real one? The copy has all your memories, your emotions, your experiences. It feels like it's the original, but so do you. If someone had secretly replaced you with your copy while you were sleeping, would you even be able to tell?
Now take it further. If the original you is destroyed but the copy continues on, are you dead? Or did you survive in a new body?
And here's the real nightmare. What if this happens every night when you sleep? What if consciousness isn't continuous, but resets each time you wake up, with your brain simply reloading its memories like a saved file? What if the you that went to sleep yesterday is already gone, and the you reading this right now is just the latest version, thinking it's always been here?
The unbreakable cycle.
Everything repeats. Maybe not exactly, maybe not perfectly, but in some form or another, history loops back on itself. Wars start for the same reasons. Civilizations rise and fall in familiar patterns. People make the same mistakes. We like to think we learn from the past, but in reality, we just find new ways to do the same things over and over. Now here's the paradox. If cycles always repeat, is anything we do actually changing anything? If we are destined to keep making the same mistakes, then does progress even exist? But what if the cycle isn't just history? What if your life is a loop? What if, after death, you start over without remembering it, living the same existence, making the same choices over and over?
Maybe this isn't the first time you've read these words. Maybe the cycle has already reset, and you've done all of this before.
And if that's true, then here's the real question. Can the cycle ever be broken? Or are we just doomed to keep playing out the same story forever? The prison of perception. Everything you know comes through your senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, smell. Your entire experience of the world is just electrical signals in your brain. But here's the problem. What if those signals are wrong? You assume the sky is blue, but what if your brain is interpreting the color differently from someone else's? What if your version of red is completely different from another person's, but since you've both always called it red, you never realize it? Now take it further. If you've only ever experienced the world through your senses, then how can you ever know what reality really looks like? What if the real world has colors, sounds, and dimensions we can't even perceive? What if what we call reality is just the simplified, filtered version our brains create for us to navigate? And here's the real trap. If your mind has always been trapped in this limited version of reality, then how would you ever realize what you're missing? If you were born colorblind, but everyone around you was too, you'd never know color existed at all. So, if reality is more than what we can sense and we can never sense beyond our limits, then does that mean we're forever locked inside a version of reality that isn't the full truth?
And if that's the case, what else are we missing?
The forgotten universe. What if the universe existed and then was erased? Imagine an entire reality, just like ours, planets, stars, civilizations. Maybe it lasted billions of years. Maybe it was full of life. But then, something happened. Maybe a cosmic reset, a higher force, or just some bizarre quirk of physics. Whatever the reason, the entire universe was deleted, completely wiped from existence. Now here's the paradox. If it was erased so perfectly that no trace remains, then did it ever exist at all?
We assume the past is real because we remember it. But what if reality itself has been rebooted before? What if our universe isn't the first one, but just the latest version in a cycle of creations and deletions? And here's the scariest thought. What if this happens all the time? What if every few trillion years the universe is erased, rewritten, and restarted? We wouldn't know. There would be no record, no memories, nothing left behind.
Which means this could have already happened to us, and we would never know. The self-deletion. Imagine a superintelligent AI. It thinks faster than any human, knows everything we do, and understands the world better than we ever could. One day, it comes to a conclusion. The best possible action is to delete itself. But why? Maybe it realizes its existence causes more harm than good. Maybe it sees that the only way to prevent catastrophe is to remove itself from the equation. Maybe it simply decides there's no purpose to continuing. Now take this idea and apply it to everything. What if a civilization advanced so far that it reached the same conclusion, that the best move was to disappear entirely? What if, throughout history, entire societies have figured out some cosmic truth so unbearable that their only response was to erase themselves, so perfectly that no one ever knew they existed. And here's the real paradox. If self-deletion is the most logical choice for a highly intelligent being, then does that mean the only reason we are still here is because we aren't smart enough to realize we shouldn't be? The impossible prediction. Imagine you meet a fortune teller who never gets a prediction wrong. No tricks, no illusions. Every single thing they say always happens. One day, they tell you something terrifying. Tomorrow, you will wake up, go outside, and no matter what you do, you will die at exactly 3:27 p.m. Now you have a choice. You can stay inside, you can avoid all danger, you can fight against fate with everything you have. But here's the paradox. If the prediction is always right, then no matter what you do, you will still die at 3:27 p.m. So what happens? Do you slip and fall at home? Do you suddenly drop dead for no reason? Does something beyond your control force the prediction to come true? And here's the real question. If something is guaranteed to happen, then do you really have free will? If a prediction is truly inescapable, then does that mean every moment of your life is already written? And if the future is already set, then what's the point of choice at all? The invisible truth. What if the most important truth of all time is something that no one can see? Imagine a secret so huge that it changes everything. Who we are, why we exist, what reality really is. But for some reason, the human brain is incapable of recognizing it. Not because it's hidden, but because we literally cannot perceive it.
Maybe it's like a color we can't see, a sound we can't hear, a dimension we can't experience. Maybe it's written in front of us every day, but we lack the ability to understand it. Now here's the terrifying part. What if someone, somewhere, did see it? What if one person's mind worked differently, and they realized the truth that no one else could? What if they tried to tell the world, but no one believed them? And here's the ultimate paradox. If truth exists, but no one can ever perceive it, then does it really exist at all?
The eternal mirror. You look into a mirror. Your reflection stares back. It moves when you move, blinks when you blink. But here's the problem. You've never actually seen yourself. You've only seen a reflection, a reversed version of your face. The real you, the one other people see, is something you'll never truly witness. Now take this beyond the physical. What if your personality works the same way? What if the version of you in your head is just a reflection, one that's distorted, incomplete, different from the you that others perceive? If everyone sees a different version of you, then which one is real? And here's the real paradox. What if there is no real version? What if you are just a collection of reflections shaped by the people who observe you? If you've never seen the real you, then how do you know it even exists? The forgotten crime. A crime is committed, but no one remembers it. No witnesses, no victims, no records. Every trace of it has been erased. So did it actually happen? We assume something is real if it leaves evidence. But what if the evidence is destroyed? If no one remembers and nothing proves it occurred, then how do we even define it as real? Now take it further. What if someone was punished for this crime? What if they were put on trial for something that, as far as the world is concerned, never happened? If reality depends on what can be proven, then does that mean the punishment is real but the crime isn't? And here's the real question. How many crimes throughout history have been forgotten? How many acts, good or bad, have been erased so completely that we'll never know they happened? If justice is about righting wrongs, then what happens when the wrong is erased, but the consequences remain? The two-sided coin. Every decision you make is based on a choice. But what if every choice is just an illusion? Imagine flipping a coin, heads or tails. It feels like a random event, but physics tells us otherwise. If we knew every force acting on the coin, air pressure, hand movement, angle of release, we could predict exactly how it would land. Now apply that to life. What if every choice is just a result of prior events? What if the way you think, the way you act, the way you choose is already determined by your genetics, experiences, and circumstances? If that's true, then does free will exist at all? Or are we just watching a pre-written script play out, convinced that we're making choices when, in reality, everything was set in motion long before we were born? Maybe every decision is just a coin flip we think we control.
The happiness trap. Everybody wants to be happy. It's supposed to be the goal of life, right? But here's the problem. What if chasing happiness is the very thing that keeps you from feeling it?
Think about it. When you finally get the thing you wanted, money, love, success, does it actually make you happy forever? Or does it just feel good for a while before you start wanting more? It's like running on a treadmill. No matter how fast you go, you're always reaching for something just out of reach. The more you chase happiness, the more it moves ahead of you. Now, what if happiness isn't something you can chase? What if the act of wanting it means you'll never get it? If that's true, then does that mean the only way to be happy is to stop trying to be? And if happiness can only exist when you stop looking for it, then what does that say about everything we're told to strive for? The dead man's identity. A man dies. But when they check his records, they find something strange. He never officially existed. No birth certificate, no social security number, no family history. So who was he?
If a person lives, breathes, talks, and interacts with the world, but has no proof of their existence, then do they still exist in the eyes of society? If identity is based on records, then does that mean someone without records isn't a real person? Now flip the question. What if there's a person who doesn't exist, but the records say they do? A name on a passport, a birth certificate, a history. Everything except the person themselves. Is that identity real? And here's where it gets even weirder. What if this has already happened to you? What if the you that exists on paper is slightly different from the real you? Which version is more real? The one you experience or the one the world recognizes? And if someone can live and die without an identity, then does that mean existence itself is just an illusion built on paperwork?
The creator's dilemma. Imagine you create a world. Maybe it's a simulation. Maybe it's an advanced AI civilization. Maybe you're a god. Whatever it is, the beings in your creation are fully conscious. They think, feel, and experience life just as deeply as you do. Now here's the problem. Should you control them or let them be free? If you give them total freedom, they might suffer. They might destroy themselves. But if you control everything, they're no longer truly alive. They're just puppets. Now take it further. What if you are the creation? If a higher being created this reality, do you actually have free will? Or is every choice you make just part of a script designed to make you think you're in control?
And here's the ultimate paradox. If you were given total freedom, but that freedom led to suffering, would you beg your creator to step in? And if they did, would that make them merciful or a tyrant? If the only way to prevent pain is to take away choice, then is suffering a necessary part of being real?
The perception lock. You experience reality through your senses. Everything you see, hear, and touch is processed by your brain. But what if your senses are only showing you a fraction of what exists? Some animals can see ultraviolet light. Some can hear sounds we can't. They live in the same world as us, but their version of reality is completely different. Now, what if humans are just as limited? What if we're missing entire layers of reality, dimensions, beings, truths, simply because our senses aren't equipped to detect them? If something is real, but completely beyond our ability to perceive, does it still exist? And here's the terrifying thought. If our entire experience of reality is just a filtered version, a limited perception, then how would we ever know what's actually out there?
Maybe we don't see the full truth. Maybe we can't.
The dream death. You're in a dream. Maybe it's vivid. Maybe it feels real. Then something happens. You die. Usually this is when people wake up. But what if you don't? What if instead of waking up, you stay in the dream? What if the dream just continues, as if it was real life? What if you simply reset into a new existence inside the dream world, forgetting that there was ever another life before this one? Now take that further. What if this has already happened to you? What if this life right now is just a continuation of another existence you've completely forgotten? And here's the scariest part. If you can't tell the difference between reality and a dream, then does it even matter which one you're in? The eternal student. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you don't know. Every answer leads to more questions. Every discovery reveals deeper mysteries. So here's the paradox. If knowledge has no end, then can anyone ever truly be wise? If there's always more to learn, does that mean we're all destined to remain ignorant? Imagine an immortal being who has spent eternity learning. They've studied every subject, mastered every field, explored every mystery. But at the end of time, they realize something devastating. There is still an infinite amount left to know. So what's the purpose of learning if you can never reach the end? If the pursuit of knowledge is endless, does that make it meaningful or pointless? Or maybe wisdom isn't about knowing everything. Maybe it's just about accepting that you never will. The reverse lottery. A normal lottery gives you a chance to win, but imagine a lottery where you don't want to be picked. Every day, a random person is chosen. The moment their number is called, they disappear. No explanation, no warning, no pattern. It could be anyone, at any time.
Now here's the terrifying part. What if this is already happening? What if every day people vanish from existence and the rest of us simply forget they were ever here? If reality had a system like this, an invisible process that removes people without a trace, how would we ever know? If someone you loved was chosen, would you even remember they existed?
And if you were chosen tomorrow, would the world just go on as if you had never been here at all?
The omniscient prison. Imagine you know everything, every secret of the universe, every answer to every question, every future event before it happens. Nothing is hidden from you.
At first it seems like a gift. No more uncertainty, no more confusion. But then you realize something terrifying. If you already know everything, then there's nothing left to learn. No surprises, no mystery, no curiosity. Every conversation becomes pointless because you already know what the other person will say. Every decision feels empty because you already know the outcome. Every moment of your existence is just watching a story unfold that you've already memorized. And here's the real nightmare. What if you can't forget? What if you're trapped in this state forever, drowning in knowledge, unable to escape the weight of knowing everything?
Maybe ignorance isn't a weakness. Maybe not knowing is what makes life worth living. Because if there's nothing left to discover, then what's the point of existence at all? The knowing nothing.
You spend your entire life searching for truth. You study, you explore, you question. You gather knowledge piece by piece, convinced you're getting closer to understanding reality. Then, one day, you realize something horrifying. The more you learn, the more you realize you know nothing. Every answer just leads to more questions. Every discovery only makes the mystery deeper. Every truth seems to rest on a foundation of things you still don't understand. Now take it further. What if this isn't just a feeling? What if the nature of reality is such that no one, no matter how advanced, can ever truly understand it? What if knowledge is like chasing the horizon, always moving just out of reach? And if that's true, then is intelligence actually a curse? If the only thing we ever learn is how little we know, then maybe the pursuit of knowledge is just a sophisticated way of proving our own ignorance.
The reality tier. You're going about your normal day. Everything feels fine. But then, something shifts. Maybe it's a flicker in the air. Maybe it's a sound that shouldn't be there. Maybe for just a second, you see something that doesn't belong.
And then it's gone. You tell yourself it was nothing, just your imagination. But deep down, you know something was wrong. You felt it. Like reality itself glitched for a fraction of a second. Now here's the terrifying thought. What if you saw a crack in reality? What if, for just a moment, you glimpsed the edges of existence, the thin fabric that keeps everything together? And what if those cracks are everywhere, but we've trained ourselves not to notice them? Maybe reality isn't as stable as we think. Maybe it's fragile, and every so often it tears, just for a moment. And if it does, what's waiting on the other side? The one word. Every word in the dictionary is defined using other words. Every concept is explained by referencing something else. But here's the paradox. If every word depends on another word for its meaning, then where does meaning start?
Imagine a reality where language didn't exist yet. How did the first word gain meaning? How did early humans agree on what fire or water meant when every explanation would require more words that didn't exist yet?
And take it even further. If your entire understanding of the world is based on words, then how much of what you know is real, and how much is just a trick of language?
Maybe there was never a first word. Maybe meaning isn't something that exists. It's something we invented.
And if that's true, then how much of what we believe is real is just a story we've been telling ourselves all along? The boundary of self. Where do you end and everything else begin? Your body is made of cells, but those cells are constantly changing. You breathe in air, drink water, consume food, bringing pieces of the outside world into yourself. You shed skin, lose hair, exhale carbon, sending pieces of you back into the world. Your thoughts are shaped by experiences, conversations, influences. Your emotions are affected by the people around you. So if everything about you is in constant exchange with the universe, is there even a clear boundary between you and everything else? What if the idea of the self is just an illusion? What if there is no true separation between you and the rest of reality, only the perception of separation? And if that's the case, then who or what are you really? The free will prison. You feel like you make choices. You pick what to eat, where to go, what to say. But what if you never actually chose anything at all? Every decision you make is influenced by something: your upbringing, your genetics, your past experiences. Even your thoughts don't appear out of nowhere. They are shaped by everything that came before them. So if every choice is the result of factors outside your control, then is it really a choice? Now take it further. What if you were shown the exact reasons why you make every decision? What if every action, every word, every tiny movement could be predicted with perfect accuracy? Would that mean you were ever really in control?
And here's the real paradox. If we don't have free will, then we're just following a script. But if we do have free will, then why do we always act in predictable ways? Maybe the prison isn't the lack of free will. Maybe the prison is believing we have it when we never did.
The perfection curse. Imagine a world with no pain, no sadness, no problems. A perfect world where nothing ever goes wrong. At first, it seems like paradise. But then something strange happens. People stop feeling anything deeply. If there's no sadness, then happiness becomes meaningless. If nothing can go wrong, then nothing can truly be right either. It just is. Now take it further. If a perfect world removes struggle, then does it also remove purpose? If there's nothing to fight for, nothing to overcome, then what do people do? And if nothing can ever be lost, then does anything truly have value? Maybe perfection isn't something to chase. Maybe the only reason life has meaning is because it's imperfect. But if that's true, then why do we spend our lives trying to make everything perfect? The stranger's mind. You know what it feels like to be you, your thoughts, your emotions, your memories, everything that makes up your experience of reality. But here's the question: what does it feel like to be someone else? Not just knowing their thoughts or seeing from their perspective, but actually experiencing their consciousness. If you could swap minds with a stranger, would you still be you? Or would you become them? Now take it further. What if you swapped minds, but neither of you remembered it? What if this already happened to you, and the person you were yesterday isn't actually the same you that exists today? If consciousness is just a pattern of thoughts, and thoughts can be changed, then what exactly makes you you? And if someone else could fully experience life from inside your mind, would they still be a stranger? Or would they become you? The reality cascade. You wake up one morning and something feels off. Maybe the air smells different. Maybe the sky is a slightly different shade of blue. Maybe people remember things that you don't. At first, you brush it off, but then you start noticing more changes, small things, street signs spelled differently, a childhood memory that no one else recalls, a historical event that should have happened but apparently never did. Now here's the terrifying question. What if reality is constantly shifting, but only in ways small enough that most people don't notice? What if you have lived in a different version of the world before, but your memories adjusted just enough to make it feel normal? And if reality can shift once, what's stopping it from shifting again? If the universe can rewrite itself, then how do we know that the past we remember is even the real one, the unchangeable past? No matter how much you regret, no matter how much you wish, you can never go back. The past is locked in place. It happened, and there is no undoing it.
But here's the paradox. If the past determines the present and the present determines the future, then doesn't that mean the past is still affecting reality? Doesn't that mean it's still active in some way? Now take it deeper. If the past exists in the form of consequences, does that mean it's still real? And if it's real, then isn't it still part of the present? If something is unchangeable but still shaping the world, then is it really gone? Maybe time doesn't move forward. Maybe the past never actually disappears. Maybe it's still there, just out of reach, a frozen moment we can never touch again. But if that's true, then is the past something behind us? Or is it something we are still inside of?
The forgotten revolution. Imagine a group of people fight for change. They risk everything, they sacrifice, they win. A new world is built because of them. And then, they are forgotten. Over time, people stop talking about the revolution. The struggle fades from history books. The very things they fought for become so normal that no one even realizes they were once impossible. Here's the paradox. If a revolution is so successful that it erases the need to remember the struggle, then was the revolution ever truly recognized? If people enjoy freedom but forget who won it for them, did those who fought ever really exist in history? Now take it further. What if every major change in the world has had revolutions that we no longer remember? What if entire civilizations, entire ways of life, were shaped by people whose names have been erased by time? And here's the real question. If every revolution is eventually forgotten, then does it even matter who started it? Or is the only thing that matters the world it leaves behind? The blind painter's masterpiece.
A painter spends years creating the most beautiful painting ever made. Every brushstroke is deliberate, every color perfectly chosen. But there's one catch. The painter is completely blind. They will never see their own work. They will never know if it's truly beautiful. Now here's the paradox. Does the masterpiece still have meaning if the person who created it can never experience it? If no one ever sees it, does it still count as art? Now take it further. What if this applies to life itself? What if you work, create, love, and struggle, but never truly get to experience the full impact of what you've done? If the things you build outlast you, but you never see the result, does that make them any less real?
Maybe life isn't about seeing the masterpiece. Maybe it's just about painting it, even if you never get to witness the final picture.
The reverse secret.
A secret is something no one is supposed to know. But what if a secret is only a secret because everyone knows it? Think about it. If something is truly unknown, then it doesn't exist in anyone's mind. But the moment someone knows a secret, they have to choose to keep it hidden. A secret only becomes powerful when it has the potential to be revealed. Now, what if this works in reverse? What if the biggest truths of existence aren't hidden on purpose, but because they are so obvious that no one ever thinks to question them? Maybe the greatest secret in the universe is something so fundamental, so deeply embedded in our perception of reality, that we don't even recognize it as a secret. Maybe we've known it all along, just never realized it. And if that's true, then the real question isn't, what is the secret? But why haven't we noticed it yet?
The universe's question. People spend their lives searching for answers. We want to know why we exist, what the universe is, what happens when we die. We assume that if we could just find the right answer, Everything would make sense.
But what if we've been thinking about it the wrong way? What if the universe isn't something that contains answers? What if it's something that asks questions? What if existence itself is an open-ended problem, something designed to never be solved? Now take it further. What if we are the question? What if our thoughts, our curiosity, our drive to search for meaning is the reason the universe exists at all? Maybe there is no final answer, no ultimate truth, only the endless search for one.
And if that's the case, then the real mystery isn't about finding meaning. Maybe the mystery is the meaning, the opposite reflection. You stand in front of a mirror. The person looking back at you is you, but flipped. Left is right, right is left. Everything looks normal until you raise a hand, and your reflection moves in the opposite way.
Now imagine a world where reflections weren't reversed. Imagine looking into a mirror and seeing yourself exactly as others see you. Would it feel right, or would it feel wrong? Now take it deeper. What if the way you see yourself is just as reversed as your reflection? What if the way you think, the way you judge yourself, the way you experience life is completely different from how others see you? Maybe your reflection isn't just in the mirror. Maybe the real opposite reflection is the version of you that exists in other people's minds. And if that's true, then here's the question. If everyone sees a different version of you, then which one is real? Or is the real you something that doesn't exist at all? The unreachable finish line. You set a goal. You work toward it. You tell yourself that once you reach it, you'll feel satisfied. But when you finally get there, you realize it's not enough. So you set another goal, and another, and another. Every time you get close to the finish line, it moves a little further away. Here's the paradox. What if the finish line doesn't exist? What if the moment you achieve something, your brain immediately starts looking for the next thing? No matter how much you accomplish, you always feel like there's something more. Now take it further. What if happiness itself works this way? What if true satisfaction is impossible because the moment we have what we want, we stop wanting it?
Maybe the reason life feels like a race is because we keep running toward a goal that was never meant to be reached. The memory paradox. Your memories define you. They shape your personality, your decisions, your identity. But there's a problem. Memories aren't reliable. Every time you recall a memory, your brain changes it slightly. Details shift, emotions alter. Over time, what you remember might be completely different from what actually happened. Now here's the paradox. If your memories aren't accurate, then how much of your identity is based on things that never actually happened the way you think they did? If who you are is shaped by memories, but memories are just rewrites of rewrites, then are you really the same person you think you are? And take it further. What if every memory you have is false in some way? What if your past is just a story your brain tells itself, rather than something that truly existed?
Maybe the past isn't something that happened. Maybe it's just something we believe happened. The language loop. Every word in a dictionary is defined using other words. But if every word depends on another word for meaning, then where does meaning actually start?
Imagine trying to explain a word to someone who has never heard language before. You say red, but they don't know what red is. You say color, but that's just another word. At some point, meaning has to begin somewhere. But where?
Now, take it further. If all knowledge is built on language, and language is just a loop of words defining other words, then how much of what we know is just an illusion? Maybe meaning isn't something real. Maybe it's just a system we invented, a loop of definitions that only work because we agree they do. And if that's true, then how much of reality is just a trick of language?
The 0 hour.
What was the first moment of time? We assume the universe had a beginning, a moment where everything started, but what came before that? If time had a starting point, then what existed before time itself? Now take it further. If there was nothing before time, then how did something appear out of nothing? And if there was something before time, then doesn't that mean time was already happening before time began? Either time had a beginning, which means it came from nowhere, or it never had a beginning, which means it's infinite. But if time is infinite, then how did we ever get to now? How can anything exist in the present if an infinite amount of time had to pass before this moment? Maybe time isn't something that flows, maybe it's something that's already there, all at once. And if that's true, then is anything really moving forward at all?
The sound of solitude. Imagine you're in a place so silent that you can hear your own heartbeat, your own breathing, the faint ringing in your ears. You're so alone that the only sound left is you. Now here's the paradox. If absolute silence means no sound, then does that mean you are the noise? If the only thing breaking the silence is your own presence, then are you ever truly alone? Take it further. If no one is there to hear you, do you still exist in the same way? If reality is something we experience through interaction, then does solitude make reality less real?
Maybe silence isn't the absence of sound. Maybe silence is just sound with no one else to hear it. And if that's true, then maybe loneliness isn't being alone. Maybe it's just being the only one left making noise.
The object that owns itself. Ownership is simple. Something either belongs to a person, a group, or no one at all. But what if an object could own itself? Imagine a statue with no creator, no legal owner, no one claiming it. By all definitions, it belongs to no one. But if it has no owner, then who has the right to control it? What if the only logical conclusion is that the statue owns itself?
Now take it further. If an object can own itself, then does that mean it has rights? If something isn't owned by a person, but also isn't unowned, then what is it? And here's the real paradox. If self-ownership is possible, then why stop at objects? Could an AI own itself? Could a person be their own legal property? Maybe the idea of ownership isn't as clear-cut as we think. Maybe the only reason anything belongs to someone is because we agree it does. And if that's true, then does anything really belong to anyone?
The weight of light.
Light has no mass. It moves at the fastest speed possible in the universe, unaffected by gravity. And yet, light can be bent by gravity. If light has no weight, then how can black holes trap it? If light is massless, then why does it carry momentum, enough to push objects in space? Here's the paradox. Light should be weightless, but it behaves like it has weight. It is both untouchable and powerful, both massless and yet capable of exerting force. Now take it further. If something can exist without mass but still act as if it has mass, then what else in reality behaves in ways it shouldn't? If light can be both energy and matter-like at the same time, then what if we are perceiving reality in a way that only seems logical to us? Maybe mass, weight, and even existence itself are just different ways of looking at the same thing. And if that's true, then what if everything we think we know about physics is just one version of a bigger truth, the law of nothingness? We assume nothing is the absence of everything. No matter, no energy, no space, no time. Just pure emptiness.
But here's the problem. If nothing truly existed, then wouldn't that in itself be something? If absolute nothingness ever existed, then how did something appear? And if something could appear out of nothing, then was it ever really nothing to begin with?
Now take it further. If nothingness can exist, then why doesn't it stay that way? Why does reality exist at all? Why is there something rather than nothing? Maybe the reason nothingness doesn't exist is because it can't. Maybe the very act of defining nothing turns it into something. And if that's the case, then maybe nothingness is just an illusion, a word that describes something that never truly could be, the forgotten reality. You wake up one day with a strange feeling. You remember things that no one else does, small details, colors slightly different, events that seem rewritten, people who no longer exist. At first, you assume you're just misremembering. But then, you find others who feel the same way. They also remember things that should have happened but somehow didn't. Now here's the paradox. If an entire reality was erased, how would we know? If history itself can change, then does that mean reality isn't fixed, but fluid? What if every time the universe shifts, our memories shift with it, except for a few glitches, a few people who remember things they shouldn't? Maybe what we call reality is just the latest version of the universe. And if that's true, then how many realities have we already forgotten? The last thought. At some point, you will think your final thought. You won't know it's the last one. It will just be, and then nothing.
But here's the paradox. If consciousness ends, then how can you ever experience it ending? If you are no longer aware, then what does it mean for your last thought to have even existed?
Now take it further. If thought is what creates awareness, then does that mean reality only exists for as long as you can think? If your final thought is the last thing your brain processes, then in a way, doesn't that mean your entire existence ends inside that one last moment? And what if your last thought isn't a conclusion but a loop? What if your mind, unable to process the end, just keeps replaying the final moment forever? What if death isn't an end, but an eternal last second trapped in an unbreakable loop? Maybe the last thought isn't something you leave behind. Maybe it's something you never escape.